Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I need to get a motion to go into the 84th special session, please.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. First item is the approval of memorandum of understanding with the Maryland Stadium Authority for Phase 2 study.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for mayor and council approval of a memorandum of understanding with the Maryland Stadium Authority to complete a Phase 2 study of the Baltimore site for a new multi-use sports and events facility. The facility would include major or minor league baseball and opportunities for other sports and entertainment options. Funding for the study is a $300,000 grant awarded to the city of Hagerstown by the General Assembly in Chapter 14 of the Acts of 2019.
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, I'm going to vote no on this tonight, and I just wanted to elaborate on why. When I decided to run for office, I made an agreement to myself that I wouldn't do anything that didn't sit well with me, no matter how much political pressure there was to do it. And this whole issue to me has been just too political, and I think there was information that we wanted we didn't get, and it doesn't feel right to me, so that's why I'm voting no tonight.
Anybody else?
Just a question, because I know we had a conversation, at least briefly, when we looked at the last iteration. It is clear within this iteration that while the motion states that it is a $300,000 grant awarded to the city of Hagerstown, from the state of Maryland, the state will actually be coordinating this with the state. So basically, the state is borrowing the $300,000 to pay another state entity to identify a consultant to do a study. The city's not putting any money into it. And I know that we've made this point a couple of times. I think, in probably half a dozen meetings, I've heard Lou say, this isn't a city project, or this isn't city money. I've heard council members say, if this would include city money, we would not be doing it. I think that's a fair assessment. And no matter how hard we've tried to make that point, every iteration of news media article that we read indicates that the city has taken another step forward, that the city is proceeding with the process, that the city is executing these agreements, when in reality, if this exact same document were before this body today, and even if this exact same document were before this body today, and let's say it costs us $40,000, $30,000, $50,000, a fraction of this money, the argument is we'd say no. I don't think there's a council member here that would say, yes, let's spend $50,000 of our money studying this item. It's not in our plans. It's not in our long-range CIP. It's not been on the table. And so I just want to make it real clear, because it doesn't seem to be getting through to our citizens, the folks we represent, that this isn't the city spending the city's money to conduct this study. We're not going and borrowing this money. We didn't even go and ask for this money. We didn't know about this money until we were already given it. And if it were our money, we would not be spending it on this. And so I think that's a very important clarification to make, one that I think that each member of this council has tried to make in their own way throughout this process, to make sure that the other parties are keenly aware that they must be not only at the table, but carrying a good bit of the weight, meaning the county, the state, and the private parties, who haven't been, because every article you read, it sounds like that this is the city's thing and it's doing it, when barely any part of this process to date has really been the city carrying that water, especially as it relates to the financial components of it. So,
And I'll point out under D, the wording does say, unless agreed to in writing, the city shall not be required to advance, expend, or pay to the authority more than the $300,000 provided for in the Enabling Act, which is defined below. The city does not agree to contribute any funds in excess of the $300,000 provided for in the Enabling Act. So that
And
clarifies that one more time.
It does, and I would concur with what Kristen says, and I would also urge all parties to try to accomplish this study as expeditiously as possible. I think it's going to be very important to try to have an estimate of the expense prior to next year's election. I think that will give, and I know, Mayor, I've spoken to you, and you've indicated to me funding mechanisms for this, okay?
None of which come from the city of
No,
Hagerstown.
No, that is correct. You know that, and I know that. And so you should take it the right way when I say this. When those kinds of figures are produced, and we do really have a realistic understanding, I'd like those figures to be done in a time so the proponents of the stadium can explain how it can be funded, and the opponents have the time to look at that and pronounce their viewpoints, because this, like, you know, I heard somebody mention the other day, I guess it was in one of the congressional hearings, when somebody was trying to say all these issues are just black and white. And his answer was, you know how many Supreme Court decisions are 5-4? Does that always mean 5 people are absolutely wrong? No. It just means there can be disagreements. So the faster we have reasonable, but more importantly, informed discourse about all the items in this, the better it's going to be for everybody in our community.
Yeah, I concur. Anybody else?
I just want to reiterate what Kristen said and what Lou said. You know, I've seen all the comments in social media and everything else too, and my position on this is I'm going to vote yes for this, and it's because I think we need another catalyst project downtown to round out and help complete what we've been doing for the bulk of the time we've been here doing things. But if this is the way we can get it, then I'm for it. I think I've said many times, I don't know if a downtown baseball venue makes the most sense. I think if that's what our objective was, then probably putting more money in the old stadium probably makes more sense. But if this is the way to get a downtown entertainment system, or entertainment center, then I'm for it.
Anybody else?
Thanks for saying that, Kristen. Thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate it. I'm sure that our citizens appreciate it. I'm looking forward to seeing the second phase and the results of it. I hope you're right, Austin.
I hope it comes back as exciting as we think it
Yep,
will.
I'm excited.
Anybody else, one more time? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-2. Approval of U.S. Department of Justice grant.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for mayor and council approval of the U.S. Department of Justice grant. The Hagerstown Police Department received a U.S. Department of Justice grant in the amount of $212,566, which will assist in the transition from the Unified Crime Report System to the National Incident-Based Reporting System. There are no matching funds.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, we'll go out of special session into the work session. First thing is I have two proclamations, one for Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month and the other for the Walking School Bus Kickoff. I'll do the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month first. Stephanie, now, did you join me? Yes. Anybody else? This is pretty long. Proclamation for Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, October 2019. Whereas approximately 1 million pregnancies each year in the United States end in early pregnancy loss, stillbirth, or death of a newborn child. Whereas Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month was first declared by President Ronald Reagan on October 25th, 1988. This month recognizes a loss so many parents experience across the United States and around the world. It is also meant to inform and provide resources for parents who have lost children due to miscarriage, ectopic pregnancy, molar pregnancy, stillbirths, birth defects, SIDS, and other causes. And whereas 1 in 4 experience pregnancy and infant loss. Early pregnancy loss is the most common type of loss. According to the ACOG, studies reveal that anywhere from 10 to 25% of all clinically recognized pregnancies will end in early pregnancy loss. When fetal death occurs after 20 weeks of pregnancy, it is called stillbirth. These tragic deaths occur in about 1 in 160 pregnancies. And whereas in October, Hope Through Birth will host events to honor, remember all of the sweet babies that have gone far too soon. Their annual event, Hagerstown Hearts Release, serves as an opportunity to help bring awareness to the community while remembering the ones that hold our hearts. Hope Through Birth is a nonprofit organization with a purpose to walk alongside those who have experienced pregnancy and infant loss. Hope Through Birth offers love, support, and compassion to each individual who finds themselves on the pregnancy and infant loss journey. And whereas many citizens of Hagerstown have experienced the devastating loss of a baby, and Hope Through Birth serves as a resource for those in our community who may be seeking hope and healing after loss. Now therefore, I, Robert E. Brucci II, Mayor of the City of Hagerstown, Maryland, do hereby proclaim October 2019 as Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month in Hagerstown, Maryland, and support Hope Through Birth's efforts to provide love, support, and compassion through offering support group meetings, memorial events, and workshops to help those who experience a pregnancy or infant loss to navigate life after loss.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Let's say a few words.
Yeah, I have a few things here. I'm a little bit nervous today, but I just wanted to take a moment and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the City Council, and thank you to the City of Hagerstown, who has made this proclamation possible. Pregnancy and infant loss is something that nobody really wants to think about. The death of a baby is so tragic, and a parent is never supposed to outlive their child. 1 in 4 women experience the loss of a baby, and I am sure that you can think of someone you yourself knows who has experienced a miscarriage, abortion, stillbirth, or neonatal death. Bringing awareness to such a delicate topic can change the entire grief path for those who have experienced such a devastating loss. I am the face of pregnancy and infant loss. It was on October 17th that I walked into my last OB appointment forever changed. The words, "I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat," have been forever embedded into my memory. My son, Bentley Charles Nally, was born at 38 weeks gestation, weighing 6 pounds, 19 inches, with the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. As I held my son in my arms, memorizing every feature of his lifeless body, I knew that if there was anybody that was going to feel this heartache again, I wanted to be there to support them. Over the last 8 years, Hope Through Birth had been started, and this year we became a charitable organization here in Hagerstown. We provide hope care packages, bereavement doula services, support group meetings, memorial events, and educational opportunities for our community. My husband Blake and I want to provide hope in the darkness, and we want to break the stigma of pregnancy and infant loss. Hope Through Birth wants to help others find hope and healing after the loss of a baby. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Hagerstown, for allowing our babies to be remembered. This means the world to each and every parent that stands above their child's grave, to know that they are going to be honored through our pink and blue in our town. We hope you'll look at our pinwheels for pregnancy and infant loss, which will be displayed in front of Hospice of Washington County during the month of October. Also, there will be a pinwheels for pregnancy and infant loss displayed at the end of the Cultural Trail by the handprint statue, October 13th through October 19th. We appreciate your support. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's by the grace of God, and kept taking one foot in front of the other. So thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up, can we get it? Yeah, we can get one of those.
Okay, good smiles. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now we're going to do a walking school bus kickoff day. Okay, a proclamation for Walking School Bus Kickoff Day, October 2nd, 2019. Whereas during the school year, hundreds of elementary age students in the south end of Hagerstown walk to and from school each day. And whereas studies show that walking to and from school has positive health, I never would have called that positive health benefits when I was a kid walking to school.
It's one of those hidden benefits.
Is that what it is? Okay, all right. Whereas studies show that walking to and from school has positive health benefits for children and can be a vital part of daily physical activity. And whereas walking to school improves student alertness, creativity, and readiness to learn, and acts as a stress reliever so students are able to focus on the lessons in the classroom. And whereas a walking school bus provides a fun and engaging atmosphere for students to learn safe pedestrian behavior, become connected with other students and adults in their community, and arrive to school on time and ready to learn. Now therefore, with the support of the City Council, I, Robert E. Brucci II, Mayor of the City of Hagerstown, do hereby recognize October 2nd, 2019 as Walking School Bus Kickoff Day in Hagerstown, Maryland.
Thank you.
Sure, I didn't prepare anything, but, we thank all of our partners in Hagerstown. We have guests that come and walk with our students all the time, so we thank everybody for supporting the walking school bus, and we thank the city for supporting the walking school bus by increasing the safety in the south end. We've got a lot of new crosswalks, we've got a lot of new signals, and that matters a lot to the kids. And thank you to Kay, who was a Bester parent at the time, for bringing the idea to us. Come join us, come walk with us to school.
Harry, you want to get a picture?
What's the month? 7:30?
What?
7:30?
7:45.
What?
I think 7:45 at Mill Street.
I do remember that.
We should probably look at that. Emily's not showing up at 7:30.
7:45.
That pretty slippers.
I know, her pajama pants. You'll be fine, you'll fit in. It's fine.
Okay. Good smiles.
You'll see in a
One,
minute.
2, 3. Okay?
So what time is your walk tomorrow?
Yeah, what time do we need to be there?
If you are coming, you can meet at my office at 8 o'clock.
Even better.
Or if you go to the Bester Elementary page, they have all the bus stops up there, and you can pick which one you want to go to and be there by about 8:05.
Oh, there you go, Emily.
I
8:05,
don't
give you
want
5 more
to
minutes.
Thank you.
She's gonna pick the 8:05.
What time?
8.
8?
I'm just saying.
All right, Gwen Rogers, President and Chief Executive Director, United Way of Washington County, for the Alice Report verbal update.
Right there.
Thank you all very much for this opportunity. I'd like to just take a moment to introduce you to ALICE. ALICE is an acronym. It stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, but Employed. Sometimes this gets confused with what we've historically called the working poor, and that's not this group at all. These are folks who are above poverty, but from a day-to-day basis, they face imminent financial ruin simply because they haven't the facility to be able to save money beyond the next paycheck that they have. They get by, they pay their bills, they participate in the community, they have kids, and they try to do the best they can with what they have. But it's difficult for them to get ahead for a variety of different reasons. Either they don't have skills, or they don't have the knowledge or understanding of our financial systems, or they simply just are comfortable with the generations and how they've been raised, that you can just get along and be okay. United Way has been working on trying to help this particular population, the folks who wait on your tables when you go out to dinner, the folks who work in the convenience store when you go in to get a coffee in the morning, the folks who check out your groceries. What we try to do is work with organizations that are providing assistance and education to help kids be able to focus better in school, for parents to understand how they can work with their kids and help their kids do better and break a generational poverty issue. We also work with organizations that are trying to provide health care to this group as well. We work with organizations that are providing financial literacy training, and also in organizations that are providing basic needs, with the intent that over time, these folks will have the opportunity to do better, that they will gain some assets, that they will be able to get an education and improve their life situation, set aside some money so that their kids won't be in the same situation that they found themselves in. You would think that I would be coming to you and talking about this as a problem in our community, but the reality is this is the second time that the survey, the report has been put together. And Hagerstown is actually doing better than it was 2 years ago. And it's good to know this. It's good to know that the efforts that you all have put in and that the business community have put in and that the nonprofit and charitable community and faith communities have all worked together to create a better community for us, and it's working. And so I bring you that news, but we need to keep working on those things. In the 21740 zip code, 50% of folks are above that limit. You only have about 13% who are in poverty. That's below the consistent national average over time, which is generally 16%. And so I encourage you to continue the work that you're doing, to continue to make our community a better place.
Thank you very much, yes. That is good news to hear for a change.
I think I gave you all some information
Yes, you
there
did,
that you
yes,
had. Okay. The numbers are generally county, but you can go to the website that's indicated on there, and you can get it down to the zip code level. And so you'll find the information to be helpful, and I hope it helps you all as well.
As a county, is it still an increase, is it still better? as it was
I think
before?
so, but it's you know, the shift from place to place and how folks are moving. I tended to look at this particular, these two zip codes that are primarily the Hagerstown and 40 and 42 zip codes for today. But overall, I think the county has been doing better.
Good.
I think Maryland overall is also doing better. This, if you go in and you want to look at states, there are about 23 states that are participating in this through United Way. The research is done out of Rutgers University. In our area, Pennsylvania has just started participating in this process. Virginia has as well. And so you can kind of see how the folks around us are doing. Let me think. It started actually about 6 years ago, so you can go in and look at, say, Washington State, which was one of the first states to be involved, and see how it's changed over time. But it's a different way of looking at a particular population that is in danger, but has potential. And so that's why we want to see what we can do to help.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the work that you do as well.
Well, thank you very much.
Are tremendous in our communities. Thank you.
We appreciate it. We're glad to be here. You know, we just figured out we've been here for 100 years,
Yeah, there you go.
off and on.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gwen.
Have a good evening.
Next up, regulation of temporary signage.
Good evening. We come bearing the greetings of the Planning Commission, who asked us to come before you to ask you your guidance regarding an issue that they're dealing with for the last 2 years, actually now, associated with our annual package of amendments to the Land Management Code. We deal with this once a year as a group package and put it before you as a group of proposals. Last year, one of the issues that was proposed was a revision of our sign regulations, and this was due to the results of a Supreme Court decision dealing with temporary signs, but also, frankly, our sign regulations did need some updating. The package, or that particular part of the package came forward to this body. We had gotten some feedback during the public review at the Planning Commission level from the political central committees, or one of the political central committees, but also the realtors industry regarding the regulations on temporary signage. We thought we had it worked out. It was brought to this body as part of the overall proposal, and ultimately it was decided to hold off on that. The 2018 packet was processed, and then we were asked to go back and look at the issue again to see what could be done. We did some additional research, and we cannot find any way that we can write temporary sign regulations that in any way deal with the content matter of the sign. There are a couple of exceptions to that, but for the most part, temporary signs, per the Supreme Court decision, can only be regulated based on a content neutral situation. The reason why we have had temporary sign regulations in the past that are currently on the books, but we do not enforce because of the inconsistency with the Supreme Court decision. We're basically, you can have certain signs and it's all content-based. So basically our existing regulations as they're written are unconstitutional. So
In the fact that we exempt certain types of temporary signs.
Yes.
Based on their content.
That's correct.
That's what we can't do anymore. And a few of those that are exempted are real estate signs and political campaign signs, which everybody in the world in zoning ordinances exempted them. Now, with the Supreme Court decision, it's a whole big wrinkle.
Yes. Our regulations as they currently exist aren't really inconsistent with just about any other jurisdiction out there. We were not unique in that respect, and it's causing a problem with every jurisdiction across the country that is zoning trying to figure out how to deal with this. The proposal that was brought forth last year set forth certain size and number parameters for temporary signs, and we're finding that if things are going to be regulated, that's going to have to be how it has to be regulated. And basically what we have is three options, and I'm going to step back for a quick second. One of the reasons why we have temporary sign regulations is because they're typically their appearance on commercial corridors. We actually do occasionally get complaints about the appearance of our commercial corridors with a proliferation of banners and temporary signs that are out there. So that's one of the reasons why there are temporary sign regulations. The way that was proposed was that there would be regulations on all these signs across all of the zoning districts. Basically, what there are three options here, and the Planning Commission is asking for your guidance on it because they don't want to go into a whole another round of review on this thing to find out that this body wants to go in a different direction, because ultimately it's going to be a political decision on this body's part on how it wants to handle it. Option one, as I put in the memo, you have three options. One is move forward with it as it is. It puts size and number
As was
limitations.
proposed in 18.
Excuse me, as it was proposed in 18, I stand corrected. Move forward with it, and there would be certain regulations that would vary depending on the zoning district, but not based on content. Another option is the do-nothing option, which is simply don't regulate temporary signs. However, if we don't regulate temporary signs at all, then there's going to be no ability to control the appearance of these things on our commercial corridors, or if somebody has a neighbor who decides they're going to put up an outrageously large sign in their yard, to have any control over anything like that. The third option is where it's half and half, basically. We find that the biggest issue associated with temporary signs are in our commercial districts. So the third option is to regulate them in the commercial districts and for non-residential uses, but exempt the residential uses in residential districts. And that would solve a lot of people's concerns, because people are concerned, how can you tell me how many signs for political candidates, for example, can I put in my front yard, that kind of thing. But typically, we're finding that the majority of the concern that generates the need for regulation of temporary signage is more from the commercial districts, and rarely is it ever an issue in the residential districts. So if we back away and the city regulates only in the commercial districts, we shouldn't run into that many issues by not regulating in the residential districts. So that's the situation.
Although we'll still have concern from the Republican Central Committee
Yes.
about the regulation of political campaign signs in commercial zones.
Yes.
But under option 3, couldn't you make that time-oriented? Wouldn't you propose to make it time-oriented anyway?
Well, you can only put time limitations on them for a certain amount of time, but if you put them into
Right.
mysteriously coincide with the election campaign, then you're regulating content.
No, I'm saying just pick a time frame, 60 days.
Yeah, you can have a sign up for,
Yeah.
Well, that's what he's saying.
Because, I mean, let's face it, in the commercial districts, most of your, I don't know, your fast food restaurants, your beer joints, whatever, they're gonna rotate those signs, you know what I mean? Because if you're regulating square footage,
Mhm.
total square footage, and then you regulate it based on time, they rotate those things often enough that
It would be practically impossible for us to enforce. We would
nobody's
have to be
complaining anyway.
monitoring things daily to see
You know what I'm
if
saying?
60 days have been reached.
I don't care if McDonald's has, 8 of those flag waving things up that say, get a McChicken for $1 this week, and then the next week it says a fillet of fish, and nobody cares, you know what I'm saying?
One of the things that has
That's why the second option was in there,
Yeah.
if that's the consensus of
But I
majority
think,
of the body.
but I think option 3, though, keeps people honest. In other words, let's say you got a place that is just, plastering above the square footage, above, you say, okay, look, you got these bad apples, that are ruining it. You say, every time you change signs, it's gonna cost you $10 or something. You know what I mean? At least that option 3 in the commercial zone gives you some teeth. That I think would be the only area that you would find that complaint-driven issue.
One of the places that we get significant comment about is one certain particular industry that gets banner signs provided to them by their distributors, and they practically wallpaper their buildings with them.
Who is it making complaints? I mean, I'm just curious among the council members, the elected officials. Has anybody ever had a complaint about signs in commercial buildings?
No.
Either
That
of
one, and that one on the door, I mean, that place was a tragedy. I mean, it just looked like,
Right, but I mean, it's almost invisible because of what you're saying. But my issue is, I've never had a complaint. The only time I ever had a complaint about signs is when we started sending the notice out to every one of the liquor businesses in
About the
Hagerstown,
signs.
saying, you gotta change your signs. And everybody goes, what's the problem? And that's my issue, is I don't see why we wanna start enforcing something that no elected official sitting here has ever had anybody complain about.
no, and I don't think in the impetus of saying, go with option 3 and saying, picking an amount, unless somebody comes in and actually says, hey, Chick-fil-A's had theirs up for 92 days, I don't think that you're gonna go out and count,
Well, and I
that it's
think-
been up for 60 days. But it at least gives you the ability,
But we always have that ability. When the elected officials start getting complaints from people, we can always come back to staff and say, you know what? You're right, we need to enact a sign ordinance now. But I don't know why we need to start dealing with new ordinances that are gonna do nothing but completely drive our businesses absolutely bonkers, when one of the very things that I seem to have a huge recollection we were about in this particular body is being business friendly. And how do you go about explaining to businesses that you're sending them these notices when they say to you, well, who's complaining? And you say, well, nobody. And they say, well, then why are you doing it? And if we say, which is not true, because it's not, if we were to say it's staff-driven, because you're coming in with 3 different recommendations, you're not saying what we should do, but then you get the reverse feedback, we'll see what you're doing. So that's my attitude, we just leave it until there's a reason to do something.
And have we had, I haven't had any issues with people, with residential signs, complaints that my neighbor's got way too many signs.
Every once in a while, we've had, when I say once in a while, I'm spanning 20-some years, some disgruntled folks put up, some signs that are very nasty, but they're not pre-printed signs, But
The only complaints I ever get are when people leave their
Their
election
signs up.
signs up. longer than they should.
Exactly.
That's the only complaints I ever get.
Yeah.
Like, when are you gonna make them take them down?
Mm-hmm.
The current regulations prohibit the temporary signs in liquor stores. So if that's something the council does not want to do anymore, then we need to change it. And that's why option 2 was, we don't regulate temporary signs if the council doesn't think temporary signs are a problem.
You know, temporary signs, are they the ones that you see in the?
Yeah, they're the paper ones, yeah.
A lot of them are vinyl, they're tied to a trash enclosure or a fence or the front of a building. In some
Or stuck-
cases, many of
Stuck in the
them
ground.
stuck in the ground.
But, I mean, if the council doesn't think that's a problem,
I don't think.
I have
And
not
that's the
heard of
purpose why we're here, is to
Yeah.
get guidance.
If no one, you know, without
Yeah.
any complaints.
So we're trying to fix something currently that's not currently broken.
Right.
And, you know, when I ever do receive a complaint, it's usually because some furniture business is going out of business again for the 100th time.
Well,
And they're all littered on the dual highway on state right away.
the
Well,
ones in the
and
right
having-
of way are not permitted by another part of city code.
Having
Right,
said that,
right.
I will tell you, there is, you know, I'm not going to say the name of the business, but there is a Maryland regulation that does not allow you to advertise going out of business for more than 60 days, I believe. We have a business on Pennsylvania Avenue that is now in excess of 1 year of going out of business. And I'm curious, because candidly, I filed a complaint with the Maryland Attorney General's office, and I'm curious to know if and when they're going to cease and desist their going out of business advertising. I think the first article appeared in the Herald Mail in September of 2018, announcing they were closing. So that fits in with what you're talking about of all the signage.
So we put this on hold until we actually have complaints from somebody.
Well, we would need to take it out of the code.
I take it out of the code.
Yep. Sounds good.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay. Mayor and City Council Rules of Procedure Review. I just want to point out one section of this that I found to be very pertaining to recent events, and that is under citizens' rights, 6.4, the reading of protest, which is basically what has happened several times. Interested persons or their authorized representatives may address the mayor and council for the reading of protests, petitions, or communications relating to any matter over which the council has control. When the item is under consideration by the mayor and council, if a majority of the council present agrees to let them be heard. And I think that's one of the issues that we currently have is issues that are under our control. And so that's already in there. I think maybe what needs to be done with that is to make it well-known.
Well, more than that.
Procedure.
It says more than that, Mayor. It says not only under our control, but when the item is under consideration.
Right, exactly.
Now, I appreciate that very much. And I think, you know, that you're right. I think there's interesting issues about whether someone is going to come up and say, well, we're not reading protest or petitions, so we don't fall under that category. But, you know, there were issues about whether this was First Amendment issues. This is not a First Amendment issue because it falls under 6.3, okay? And under any reading of the First Amendment, slanderous, defamatory, incendiary remarks are not permissible. People are entitled to their opinions, but not their facts, okay? By definition of the word, There is no murder going on in this community at the location that they are publicly saying is happening. Definition of murder is the unlawful taking of a life. To allow anybody to stand up and accuse any of what is our businesses, and these are professional medical people, to publicly accuse them of murder are personal and slanderous remarks. Anybody who lives in today's world understands, and I'll tell you, Mayor, the other day, my attitude was, no, everybody has the right to their opinion, but I don't necessarily have to listen to it. So I was just getting ready to get up and leave when I heard again, within the first 10 seconds, the word murder and the address of the location. That's when I turned around and sat down and moved, we adjourned. It wasn't when people wanted to start talking about religion. And let there be no misunderstanding here. This has never been a discussion about abortion. This is a discussion about religion. This is no different than a radical Islamic person coming up and preaching that we need to enforce Sharia law in the city. So if people, in my opinion, if people want to come up and express that they don't believe that abortion should be legal, to me, that's within their parameter. But as soon as I hear words like murder, an announcement of addresses, that is beyond the pale. Now, I don't know if these folks had been told they weren't to do that. I was hopeful that they would. But I think we also need to take into consideration that 6.3 needs to be amended. And it needs to say, the last sentence, may be requested to leave the meeting and may forthwith by the presiding officer or a majority of the council be barred from further attendance before the mayor and council, period, not during that meeting. To tell people, to warn them, to have them violate that warning and tell them they can no longer speak today, but you can come back next meeting and do it again, and we'll warn you again, and to parade potentially 4 or 5 people to do the same thing, to me is not acceptable. We are not taking away their rights to communicate with us because we have mail, we have telephones, we have person-to-person meetings, and we have email. But I do not believe the people who want to come here and violate these rules should be allowed to have a bully pulpit to come back and do it again over and over. And then we also have to decide at some stage of the game, I don't know how we do it, Jen. We have in here, you have under the reading, we have here when a large group of citizens wish to, each organization or group. I like that. I don't know how we do it, but I think we do have to have a limit. And 2 is in here. You know, I don't know what you do when 7 different people come in and you say, you are a group and therefore have to pick 2, and they say, no, we're not a group, we don't want to, we all want to speak. And I'm not sure how you address that because, and this has nothing to do with the topic on hand. I can come up with a whole lot of topics for you, as you know, Mayor, and I'll give you one right off the bat. And I'm sure you've been with us for some of these. Lyndon LaRue, ring a bell to anybody in here? All right. Does it ring a bell to any of you guys, the name Lyndon LaRue? Lyndon LaRue is I don't think he did it last election, but he, for probably 10 presidential elections, run for election. He's almost a cult figure and has some of the craziest, weirdest thought process on economy and things. And it would be typical during our sessions to have people from Baltimore and outside of this whole area come up with Lyndon LaRue petitions and preach to us about the end of the economic world is going to take place. They give us the date like the end of the world. So there's a lot of fringe people that want to come and speak. There are also people that are not fringe that want to come and speak. Like, I'll give you an example. People who say we need to do something about the pipeline that they want to put under the river. Well, you know, it may not be in our jurisdiction and we may not be able to do anything, but you can't, silence one group without silencing all groups. And I'm not here to preach that, but I am here to say we need to enforce 6.3 strongly. We need to amend it to be able to bar people from coming back. And we need to enforce 6.2 to limit it to 2 people and to limit it to 5 minutes. And we need to change the rules of procedure so that we go back to where citizen comments were last on the agenda, not first.
You know, we changed that to the beginning, and you were right, so that if we wanted to say something, they were here. But we also changed it because it gave people the opportunity to speak on what we were voting on that evening before we cast our votes. I hate to take that opportunity away from people. If there's an issue that we're voting on that people want to speak about and haven't had the opportunity.
Well, you can do that. We could change the rules to say that we will have citizen comments on issues that are before the council for voting on that evening first, and citizen comments that have nothing to do with what's on the agenda last. I would have no problem with that.
I'd be fine with that.
So then do council comments, or do we get the opportunity for both? Do we also have council comments
We
2
would have-
times?
No, we would have council comments one time, but keep in mind, you're always, whenever a citizen is addressing us, we have the inherent right to respond at that time if we want to.
Okay.
That's not a problem. The other thing I would point out for all of us, because sometimes we just forget the rules that we've enacted, is that these folks should not be questioning in citizen comments a council member. If they have a question for us, it should be addressed to the mayor, and they will get back. But when folks get up here and start saying, I have a question for you, Councilwoman, and that's not what citizen comments are for. They're not to question the council, they're for the citizens to comment.
I'm fine with that idea.
What, twice? Me too.
I mean, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
So do we keep like the formal, mayor and council and city administrator comments at the end of
At
the
the end.
meeting?
Yes, that's what I would suggest.
And then you can choose to respond or address whatever's being said at that time prior to the voting?
Right.
Okay.
And also, you certainly could address what folks say at the time the motion is made. At that stage, there's time for discussion. That's the perfect,
Okay.
because the only thing they're talking about is what we're gonna be voting on. And there's gonna be discussion on that issue.
We can adjust the citizen comment sign-in pages too, to
Mhm.
reflect even more of the amendments that you're considering, whatever you put in place, plus expand the topic and things like that, so that it's right there in front of you as to exactly what their topic is.
And I would
That be
also,
helpful.
And one of the things that I don't hold people to that I know I need to do better at is to have them give us their name and address.
I was just going to mention, Mayor, and reading our rules again, that is there, and I think we need to insist upon that.
Maybe even put another address sign in at the podium, something. It's on the citizen comment
Right,
sheet.
it is,
But not everybody does
but,
either.
well, a lot of people decide that the city they live in is adequate, and that's not what the address is.
Right.
Is there a reason that we have to have comments open to people who do not live in the city, do not pay taxes in the city, and we otherwise have no control over, or?
Well, we have business people who like to
Well,
speak
yeah,
that don't
and-
live in the city but have businesses in the city.
You have that, and you do have the example like I gave of citizen groups that, people who want to push for clean water, dirty water, or whatever, lift regulations that as a political body, one could certainly argue that we have influence over. And as soon as we start doing that, I think you just start getting into trouble, is my guess. This is the first time we've really, the only other problems we've had, I don't have to name names. We all know that there's some individuals who come here who just, a little bubble of plum. But generally, and then we had a good reverend come many years ago from, Compton, California, is that where he was from? He raised a little bit of devil here, but generally, it's not been a problem. And I don't think it'd be a problem if they hadn't been using the terms murder and giving the address.
An address, right.
Right, those would.
I mean, we don't allow, we never allow people to use that. We don't want people to use addresses.
No, I mean, to have somebody come in here, for instance, and accuse any one of us of that type of thing and want to make sure that every time they do it, they list our home address, we just can't do it.
Or the address of a neighbor they don't like.
And Mayor, I appreciate you upholding the rules in the last meeting. It was, because I know that puts you in the hot seat, and I know you got a lot of flack for being responsible for doing nothing but following what you're required to follow.
Anything for Jen while she's at the table?
Did you think anything we were discussing is, can't do?
I think the only thing that is questionable for me would be a permanent bar. I just need to look into that. I haven't looked at that directly.
Could we tweak that a little and not bar the person, but bar the subject matter in which the person has raised? In other words, if they're gonna come in, I get we bar them, but we're really barring them from regurgitating that item that we've said, doesn't fit the parameters of the rules. You can come back and speak on, whether, any other item, anytime you want, as long as, but we have the ability then to say, sorry, no, that's one of those as well, sorry.
Becomes
one of those as
irrelevant.
well.
I think that may be permissible.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
That's fine, that would be fine with me.
Because they may come back the next regular session and want to have an issue with
Yeah,
trash collection.
because my concern is that if we don't have, I think what we need is, if we don't have the right to permanent bar, Jen, then I would look for the ultimate question of what's the proper process to put in place so that if somebody repeatedly does the same thing, at what stage of the game can we say, no, you're barred? Which I think probably fits into, finding out when we can bar somebody from even attending in the future if there's some craziness. I'm not talking about what they say. That type of thing fits in with what we had discussions upstairs about earlier.
I was reminded about the invocation portion of it, too. You guys wanted to discuss that. I suggest, I don't want to take it out, and if you don't want to do them, that's fine. We can, I'm sure each of us know people.
Right, I'm still was going to wait till after the holidays are over to discuss with the rabbi with Hark what the council was happy to do, which was have the clergy in town rotate, and you don't want yours rotated, if I'm correct.
Or if I do, I want
You
the
find your own-
opportunity that
you
if
can do
I
your own.
do
That's
wish
right.
to have someone
So,
come in.
so
as
I would look,
opposed to me.
and I'll report back, I just know he's
Okay, you're
tied up
working on
right
that?
now
Okay.
until after the holidays.
We'll leave it as it stands for now.
We'll leave it as it stands now.
Anything else? Okay, and I suggest that we put our rules of procedure on the table for individuals to get a copy when they come in, so that they understand what the rules of procedure are for this council.
Can we put them on the podium as well?
We
Because you said
could.
you had to,
Good.
while they're
We
standing.
could put them on the pillars around.
Put them up here on the screen with a countdown of 5
Yeah,
minutes.
just at least have a copy of them somewhere. Okay, thank you, Jen. Yeah. Yeah, we'll have them for the, yeah,
Thank you, Jen.
special session. All right, Jill, you're up.
Hello. We have a request to utilize the Department of Housing and Community Development's Neighborhood Business Works Loan Program, and the request is from Doug Carroll for the Pythian Castle Building, which is 1618 West Franklin Street. This requires no commitment on the part of the city. What the state is looking for is a resolution that indicates that the city is aware of the request and of the project. The use of the funds is approximately $575,000 project for the acquisition of the building and for pre-construction costs. The building owner has already secured a Maryland Department of Planning historic preservation loan in the amount of $300,000. So that piece, I did receive a commitment letter that piece has been secured. Much
They
of
know what
this-
they're getting into with MHT?
Right. Both programs would require MHT review of the historic aspects of the building in the renovation and improvement of the facade. So this request is $250,000 to be combined with the $300,000 from historic preservation loan and approximately $25,000 from the private owner. So the state requires a resolution, and it also requires a letter of zoning compliance, which is attached in the packet. I recommend support for this. I'm happy to answer any questions about the project. And there will be a second phase to this project. That 575 is really acquisition and the pre-construction costs. There will be costs associated with the tenant fit-out and renovation of the building. So we will be working with Doug on utilization of other programs to take it all the way through both phases.
That's the old Union Hall building, right?
Yes, I'm not certain on the name, where the Pythian Castle name comes from.
This is not the only one, though. There was one in Frederick that was just redone.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's many Pythian
Yes.
castles. It's, yeah.
Did print out a Google Earth shot of it, if anyone is not clear which building we're talking about. Send that around.
Yeah, there's many Pythian
There are
castles.
some synergies between the location of this building and the Junior Fire Company. They kind of connect to the rear of each of the buildings. So I think Doug has a vision for how the two buildings can work together. And he's very excited about this project and has a passion, not just as a real estate developer, but really to give back to the community and his work on both of the buildings.
It's awesome.
Yeah, the third floor of that building is just huge and open and, yeah, it's the old Union Hall.
A grand historic ballroom, which he hopes to renovate.
Hope.
Nice.
So
You good?
with consensus, we'll bring this back at the October 22nd regular session. If there's an opportunity to bring it back at a special session before that, I think.
We're gonna
this-
have a special session on the
On
15th,
the
if that
15th,
helps.
then we'll bring it back on the 15th, and that'll help move forward the loan
Yep.
approvals.
Awesome.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
City Administrator.
Just a couple of things, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to recognize the Hagerstown Fire Department for their outstanding work in getting the fire under control and extinguished off Burhans Boulevard. Got to go out there and see what was all involved, and I literally think they probably saved a neighborhood by their response to that fire. And I think at one point in time, every company was out there trying to fight that fire, and then the diligence to stay on it afterwards. They just did a great job, so I wanted to recognize the fire department for that. Also recognize the Parks Department and Mark Haddock for finding and fixing the leak in City Park by the main entrance. That was a needle in a haystack that they were able to use some I think very innovative methods to find and to fix, and the lake is now, that area of the lake is now filling back up. You wouldn't have noticed it really, except you'll notice that the lake is a little less cluttered.
We should have had Mark up at Edgemont long ago.
Yeah, yeah. But just want to thank Mark Haddock and the crew for their work in fixing the leak.
Shelley?
Nothing tonight.
Lou?
Just when you mentioned Mark, I appreciate the letter that Mark
Yes.
got from a citizen. I won't mention her name, a good friend, but I think she is someone who's quick to express her opinion, good and bad, about the city, and I think it was an appropriate letter to Mark, and City Park continues to be a gem in this community. That's,
Austin,
Nothing this evening.
Kristen,
oh, no, I do have something else.
back to Lou.
Yeah, no, really, thank you. I'll do it again for you next year if you ask. The Mayor's
Oh,
Cup
okay.
went to 1950 MG,
There you go.
so got to,
Yeah, it's
Give
one
the
of the
Mayor's
events
Cup
I
for-
really love to go to, and
I
I
truly
was so
enjoyed it.
upset that I could not get away to get to it
You
Friday
call me
night.
next year, I'll be happy to do it again.
Glad you had a good time. Emily? Attended the ribbon cutting for the Home 2 Suites, the new hotel out on Pullman Lane, this afternoon. I was blessed to be able to have Bo with me, and he got a kick out of it. Got to help cut the ribbon, and so it was good. 102 rooms, and they've been sold out numerous times since they opened. So another feather in the cap for the city of Hagerstown to have that type of a hotel within the city limits. So, and that is all that I have, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks.
Yeah, that was, it was so chaotic, but I didn't get a chance to thank you.
Oh, Lordy God.